Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, I'm GC Smith, and today I want to talk about my favourite cycle of cards from Kaladesh, and that is the 5 monocoloured gearhulks. This cycle is absolutely amazing, and I think it really embodies the best parts of Kaladesh, really, and gives some needed power to colours that have kind of been lacking it for a while now. So how this video is going to go is I'm going to talk about each of the gearhulks quickly to go over their stats and their mana costs, whatever, and their abilities. And then after that, I'm going to start ranking them from worst to best, and give a bit of a more in-depth discussion about the use of those cards and why I rank them that way. Now, before I go any further, however, I just want to say that take this with a pinch of salt. I'm not the best player in the world. So that really means that what I'm saying is, it's based on experience of the game, it's based on a bit of research I've done and looking into the cards, but it doesn't mean I'm right. And obviously, just because I rank something as like the worst on this list or the best on this list, doesn't mean that means it's always the best or worst. I'm just kind of looking at it in a vacuum. Obviously, there are situations where that scale would change, and I could just be entirely wrong anyway. Obviously, better players will be better than that than me. But anyway, let's start in Wooburg order, and let's start with Cataclysmic Gearhulk. 3 white for a 4/5 construct artifact creature with vigilance, and whenever it enters the battlefield, each player chooses from among the non-land permanents he or she controls a artifact, a creature, an enchantment, and a planeswalker, and sacrifices the rest. Then we have blue for the Torrential Gearhulk. 4 blue for a 5/6 artifact creature construct with flash, and whenever it enters the battlefield, you may cast an instant from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. If that card would be put in the graveyard this turn, exile it instead. Then we have Noxious Gearhulk, 4 black for a 5/4 artifact creature construct with menace, and when it enters the battlefield, you may destroy another target creature. If a creature is destroyed this way, you gain life equal to its toughness. Combustible Gearhulk, 4 red for a 6/6 artifact creature construct with first strike, and when it enters the battlefield, target opponent may have you draw 3 cards. If that player doesn't, put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard, then Combustible Gearhulk deals damage to that player equal to the total mana cost of those cards, or converted mana cost, of those cards. Then you have Verdurous Gearhulk, 3 green for a 4/4 artifact creature construct with trample, and when it enters the battlefield, you may distribute 4 1/1 counters among any number of target creatures you control. Alright then, let's start by analysing these in order of ranking, really, and start at the bottom of the list with Combustible Gearhulk at number 5. Now, Combustible Gearhulk is a really good card in many ways. A 6/6 first striking body is really good, and while it's not necessarily ahead of the curve, 6 mana for 6/6 is, on the curve itself, the ability is actually not as bad as many people seem to think it is. Depending on the deck you're building this into, by that point you're playing it for 6 mana, your opponent should be on a very relatively low life total. And so both options are bad for your opponent. Either you're drawing 3 cards, in which case you've gotten a 6/6 first striker with Ancestral Recall attached to it, or they're taking the risk of taking a lot of damage. And yes, you can occasionally flip over 3 lands into the graveyard, but just remember, in that situation, you've been able to afford to pay for Combustible Gearhulk, so 6 mana, so you probably don't need those land, and it frees up better draws for you. And in the case where you just flip over something that isn't a land, well, then you're dealing a bit of damage to your opponent. Probably quite a bit of damage, actually, depending on how high your CMC is. And besides, remember, Emrakul's in the format. Put that in your deck, and there's always a chance of flipping over for 13 damage. The unreliability of the card is probably why I'm ranking this as low as it is. Again, it's a very powerful card, and it's not necessarily a bad card by any stretch of the imagination. It's just that what it's competing against as part of this cycle is probably far more reliable, or just far more powerful cards in general. Again, not a bad card, but the unreliability of its ability gets there. I mean, if they're not dead from the blast, then it's possible the creature won't kill them either. Next up, we have the Cataclysmic Gearhulk at number 4. Basically, I really think this ability is not as good at the way it's worded here, with them getting to choose. And the only recent version of a card we've had, which is Tragic Arrogance, which even when you chose what they got to keep, hasn't seen much significant play. It's seen play here and there, and yes, maybe attaching a 4/5 body to the spell is good, but you have to remember that 4/5 body has to be pretty much one of the only 2 creatures on your board, or you need to have no other significant artifact you'd like to keep, because otherwise you get to keep that, sure. But then, what about your opponents? What are they going to have? What are they going to be keeping? If they've got any of the other gearhulks on this list, then their gearhulk is killing your cataclysmic gearhulk. Being a 4/5 vigilance isn't going to help them. Often this card, I think, is just going to be blank. Even the red gearhulk will be better in many situations. The only reason it's higher than the red gearhulk is there are going to be board states where, no matter how bad the ability is and the fact they get to choose, you're going to be clearing up a lot more of the board. And if you can then follow it up next turn with a single target removal spell, then maybe it was a board wipe in some ways. Again, I just don't think it's amazing, but it's definitely very powerful. And obviously amazing and limited anyway, because unless they've got like another mythic rare themselves, well, wiping the board of all but one creature is always going to be good. Next up at number 3, we have Verdurous Gearhulk. This card has to be in number 3, really. It's a very powerful card, a 8/8 trampler for 4 at the worst case, generally if it's the only creature you have. And that's often the best case as well, actually, because sometimes you just won't want to put counters on your other creatures. Now, if you've got a lot of other creatures, you may want to spread the love. Maybe if they've got a 3 toughness creature or a 3 power creature, you'd rather spread it around so every creature you controlled had 4 toughness. Especially when you consider that we're dealing with a format without Languish, where 4 toughness becomes the new toughness to survive. Radiant Flames is the only other real board wipe we have beyond the white one, and Radiant Flames only can only really hit up to 3 toughness. So there will be times, obviously, where you want to spread the counters around to keep your team alive based on how the format's going. The only reason why, again, this is number 3, really, is because a single target removal spell just undoes everything if you make it an 8/8. It doesn't matter how big your creature is. If they've got removal spell or they've got any way to answer that creature, it's not really done anything. And every other creature here on this list does something when it enters the battlefield, assuming that even if it gets answered very, very quickly. The fact that it also has to target with its ability means that you can just remove the creature or creatures, that you have before counters get put on. That can cause issues as well. Then number 2, we have Noxious Gearhulk. Now, this is actually a card that could be at number 1, and the only reason it's at number 2 is my number 1 card is personal preference. But boy, I love Noxious Gearhulk. The ability to just kill anything for 6 mana and get a 5/4 evasive body is amazing. A lot of people will think that, you're paying too much for a removal spell, but you're not, really, because it's an aggressive spell that gains you life. It's just such a good card for what Control want to do. It removes your opponent's biggest threat, and it's your choice. And then you get an evasive beta that allows you to start winning the game, and you gain loads of life, hopefully, depending on how tough your opponent's creature is. But it allows you to get into a position where you stabilize and turn the game around, and that's what I really like about the top-end curve cards for Control decks. And as a mid-range player, again, that does the same thing. It allows you to stabilize against other mid-range decks and get an advantage by taking out their biggest creature and getting yourself a life buffer and a creature that they can't really block that easily. This card is amazing in both control and mid-range, and will see tons of play in this format. And the only reason it's not, at number 1, really, is the fact that, again, on an empty board, it does nothing, and the fact that blue's my favourite colour of Magic of all time, which, of course, means that number 1 is Torrential Gearhulk. A 5/6 flash body for 6 mana is not ahead of the curve, don't get me wrong. It's not the big flashiest body here. It's not even the biggest body base on the creatures here, or even biggest body after use. But what I do love is it's always going to have value if you've built your deck right. By time you have 6 mana, you should have instants in your graveyard in any deck. And if you built your deck right, and this goes quite easily into most control decks, you're going to have a lot of instants, whether those instants are removal spells or card draw spells. And so this is always going to have use, even on an empty board. And along with the green Gearhulk and the red Gearhulk, is the only one that does have use. It's one of the only 3 here that have uses on empty boards. But the fact that it's so amazing, you know. The fact that you can get to cast any instant you have in your deck, or in your graveyard, sorry, for free, for very limited costs, is brilliant. And I absolutely love that. It's an amazing card, and really does deserve the number one slot. Again, there's going to be board states where Noxious Gearhulk will just surpass it in many ways. But the fact is, it can get you so close to a 3-1, maybe even higher. A 5/6 flash body is very good for catching your opponents out. If they attack into it, you're probably going to be at least eating one attacker. The fact that then when it comes in, it probably flashbacks a removal spell and eats another attacker. So you're getting a 2-for-1 there, which means you're probably going to get a 3-for-1 because they do probably have to kill this at some point, and that uses another card from their hand. You know, this guy can be easily be a 3 or more for 1. You know, just how powerful he is. It's outstanding, really. I'm really looking forward to casting my playset of Torrential Gearhulks, either in Esper control or more likely in Grixis control. I'm really looking forward to building that deck. So yes, that's my look at the 4 or 5 Gearhulks, sorry. The cycle that most excites me about Kaladesh. Not to say there aren't other exciting cycles. The fast lands are pretty good as well, and going to be slotting to pretty much every deck you can try and slot them into, and they're going to be slotting into many modern decks as well, which is significant. But yeah, no, I absolutely love these cards, and I can't wait to see them myself. I can't wait to be saying Hulk Smash at the pre-release, hopefully, or hearing Hulk Smash, as long as it's not used against me. That's totally fine. So yes, thank you very much for watching this video, guys. I hope you really enjoyed it. If you did, please don't forget to leave me a like and subscribe. I'll be doing more videos in the future. And I'll see you next time.